What's up, YouTube? Last Sunday, we kind of briefly talked about something that I had some opinions on, and a lot of you actually responded pretty positively about it. You guys were talking about how, yeah, do a video on it. Please talk about this in detail, even though it's a bit controversial. It's actually probably why you guys want me to talk about it. If you don't know what I'm mentioning or don't know what I'm alluding to, I talked about how I think, and I'm a firm believer, that the current RLCS age restriction, which is 15, should be increased. And I know this is kind of a controversial opinion. I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but I would like to explain why. Before I get into that, as always, understand this is just an opinion thing, and while it may be a bit controversial, it is more so to create conversation. It is mostly to make a discussion so we can talk about in detail, because I'm just one person with one opinion. This has a lot of angles to it that I may not be thinking about. So with that said, let me know in the comments down below your own thoughts and opinions. Chat will be doing the same as well. We're over here, twitch.tv/Lawler, hanging out, having conversations like this on the daily. So if you'd like to join on us or join with us, twitch.tv/Lawler, come hang out. So with that said, let's talk about a little bit of the history, why it is and what the precedent is. We're going to probably cancel out some of the conversations or arguments for it, because some of them are, I don't think, based in a good mentality. And then we're going to get into the reasons why and benefits to it and what it may create. And this isn't going to be an attack at any one particular person or anything. These are all generalizations. This is just thoughts and opinions about how I think this should be and why I think it's a positive change. I have reasons for the age, when, why, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully we can make this make sense. So with that said, the first thing and the whole premises of the argument is right now in the RLCS, at the age of 15, you are allowed to officially compete. As long as you are 15 by the time that the main event starts and you are having potential to earn money from Psyonix, 15 is the age you need to be. And I personally think the stance on it is that that is too young. If we go back to RLCS, the very first season in 2016, I think it was April or May of 2016, a lot of the decision about this was discussed behind the scenes. This is back when Psyonix was using Twitch Esports as a partner to help run their esport, because Psyonix at the time was a company that made vehicle physics mods for games like Unreal Engine Tournament and stuff like that. They did have a couple other games like Nosgoth under their belt and everything, but nothing on that level or that scale of a competitive scene. So they threw $150,000 into a prize pool and we're like, yep, let's run a tournament, and we're gonna have a bunch of people sign up. They had like 10,000 people sign up or something like that. The Smash website got DDoSed, servers went down. Like, it was an insane turnout. But the major decision in the rules that they had to decide is, how young are we going to allow these people to sign up? At what age do we put a cutoff? And that cutoff was decided 15. Now, the exact reasons, I don't know. Maybe it was a legal precedent that was set. Maybe something their legal team, and I think it was one person at the time, I think was their legal team, was like, yep, we're going to do 15 for these reasons. Is it child labor laws? Is it this? Is it that? I don't know the specifics as to why Psyonix did it, but I do know one of the decisions was, at the time, a young player by the name of Kyle, also known as Scrubkilla, was 12. And they're like, how long are we going to make this young prodigy, a player who is considered one of the best in the world, wait? How long is it reasonable, but also not enough to discourage him from keep playing? Because young kids' interest changes. People have other desires and passions and hobbies in life. And what is enough to where it's close enough to where he'll continue to grind and give himself this opportunity, but not so far away or so close that it causes some issues within the scene because they are too young to be making decisions. So that was kind of the thought process, and I do think one of the reasons why it was set at 15, other than the legal and all the other stuff behind the scenes, was also because Scrubkilla was essentially 2.5 years or so away from competing. You know, in a couple months, he's going to be able to start streaming on Twitch and building a brand for himself, and then 2 years after that, we'll be able to talk about this journey of him. And just to make sure that this ends up happening, we're going to fly him and his father out and bring him to the first major, or the first world championship at this point for season 1, and expose him to what it's like. This is what it's like if you compete in the RLCS. We're going to set this precedent and make you feel very inspired to want to pursue this as a thing. So Psyonix opened up their checkbook. They wrote a check, said, hey, Scrubkilla Dad, you're going to come over. You're going to see what this is like. And hopefully this is enough to entice you to keep with it. And it works. So Scrub Killer comes into the RLCS in his first season. Doesn't go that great. The team of Vitality doesn't do all that great. The second season, they end up qualifying for the World Championship. And lo and behold, he wins. So pretty crazy story for Scrub Killer. And it set a precedent. And whether it was that, the legal side, or whatever, I don't know the exact reasoning. And Psyonix will probably never tell us. But that's not important. What is important is that 15 is the age that you have to be in order to go into the RLCS. And I have some concerns about that. Again, this is from my perspective and from those that I've talked to, primarily from the older generation of Rocket League pros, even though they're still very young, to some of the guys that have come in a little bit later. Primarily, 15 is a very unique age. For most people in North America, that is roughly about a sophomore in high school. Freshman year, sophomore year is kind of a very interesting time. You're still trying to develop who you are as a person, your hobbies, your interests, all that kind of stuff. They change drastically over the next couple of years. That also provides a lot of complication to the side of where I'm coming from. If you're a 15-year-old kid, you have roughly 3 years of high school left between daily classes, going to all these events, now that it is year-round. This can create a lot of complications, not only for schooling purposes, because at the end of the day, your pro career is only going to last, on average, maybe a couple of years. And after that, if you don't have your high school diploma, GED, whatever, you're probably in a pretty rough spot. Not everybody is going to be the excellence that is Rizzo at growing their brand and surviving in content after. Not everybody has that type of personality. Not everybody has that business savvy side of them. And the difficulty is, my argument is 15 too young to do that? To which I say yes, I think it is. And the reasons why. Primarily, like I said, 3 years of high school trying to balance going to class, learning social skills, getting used to social norms, how to interact with people, working in the retail side of things, all that kind of stuff, is something that I think high school is very good at. Whether you like high school or not, I was never a fan of school, but high school does a really good job of preparing you for the reality that is life. In the United States here, high school is pretty much learn this information, regurgitate this information, forget this information, rinse and repeat. But the social aspects, learning to communicate with people and interact with authority figures and all that kind of stuff, is very beneficial. And you're basically superseding all of that because they're like, hey, we're going to take you and remove you from that system. We're going to put you on a stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and now you're a public figure and you're fending for yourself. Yes, you have staff and structure and teammates around you, but that is a lot to put a young kid under. And to make that decision at such a young age, I have concerns of. My proposal is to move that to 17. And I think 17 is a good number for it, simply because usually at 17, people are starting to graduate from high school and focus on the next step in life, which is either college or another pursuit. Whether they want to take a gap year, as it's deemed, where you take a year off to try to figure out what you want to do without the pressures of school debt and all this other kind of stuff. And I understand this is a lot of NA focused stuff and it's different over in Europe, but 17 is kind of that, like, what am I doing with my life moment? What am I doing here? What do I do? And if you're in your senior year, you're 17, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, you are good enough to be a pro. You get picked up by a team. You now have a year's time of, whether it be, balancing the school side of things. Usually if you are like me as a senior, your senior year is probably your easiest, just because you are taking as many electives, and early, school maybe not be the priority for you if gaming is more of your focus. And I could be wrong. Maybe you're an honor student, you're crushing it, you're a bookworm. Kudos to you. Crush it. Get that honor stuff, give yourself a scholarship, all that kind of stuff. But at 17 is kind of when you make that pivotal decision. And that's when I think that decision can be made, because I can tell you from personal experience, me at 17, almost done with high school, is a totally different person when it comes to maturity, decision making, my experiences in the world, versus me as a 14, 15-year-old kid as a sophomore. Totally different. In just those couple of years, it is a massive difference on perspective of how the world works, between having a job and everything else. So I like the age of 17 because of the level of maturity that usually comes at 17. I still think it's a lot different, but the best comparison I can give is Kronovi very, very early in his career to Kronovi at 17 pro RLCS player, because that's when he started as well. People didn't see the Kronovi before that. And if you guys, and I highly recommend, Go ask him about that. I've talked to him about it behind closed doors. Him being 17 when things happened made for a much different experience in comparison to him being a pro and being a public figure versus him being 15. Totally different outlook. The maturity that happened over those 2 years is a really big deal. So I think 17 is a good age. It's a similar age to a lot of other esports as well, why they pick that age. But I think at 17, you're going through your senior year. You can try this pro thing out for a year. If it goes well, awesome. You can continue to pursue it and put effort into that. Maybe you choose to go to college. Maybe you decide to go do something else, other passions or hobbies. Maybe go to the caster side, the production, whatever you want to do. That age, I think, is a really good spot for it. And this opens up a world of possibilities of what we can do alongside that. As we get older people in the RLCS, hopefully it provides a little bit more professionalism and some of the things that come with it. Maybe you don't see teams split up as much due to chemistry issues. Maybe the maturity helps handle certain things. Maybe it provides better structure for the scene. I don't know. Maybe that's good or bad. Again, these are generalizations, but I do think usually with an older crowd comes with a bit more maturity. And there's obviously outliers to that all along the way. Sometimes more mature people are less, or older people are less mature. Again, it's not always a one size fits all, but I think 17 is a good age for trying to make that next big step, that next big decision in life, because it's asked every single year from high school students. Hey, going to college, what's your focus? What are you going to do with your life? What are you doing all these things? Rocket League Pro is now another option. It's also only 1 year of balancing the homework school life versus everything else, which I think is a pretty big deal as well. The difficulty is because this precedent of 15 has been set, how would they go about doing this? I think there's two major things that Psyonix could implement. Number one, you put in a grandfather clause. This is going to piss off a lot of people. This is going to be a lot of people. This is probably the controversial part, is increasing it to 17. There's a lot of people right now that are like, when I turn 15, I can play and I can compete. You look at the addition of Atao, Oski, Daniel, Aqua, etc. Those players are basically SOL. So you put in a grandfather clause, which basically states if you are 15 by this date. So say RLCS 21-22 is over. We're now going into season 2022-2023 or something. You put a statement that says, as long as you are 15 by this date, as long as you're 15 by the start of next RLCS season 2022-2023, you are still eligible to play. But anybody who signs up past that date, you have to be 17. And that hard cutoff is gonna be met with some backlash, 1000%. There's gonna be some people very, very upset, but this is when it comes down to Psyonix making a decision that I personally believe, and I don't know if other people believe this, but this is my personal opinion, that it is a necessary change that will help the betterment of Rocket League long term. Because I know there's a lot of things that they struggle doing because our pros are too young. They are not allowed to do things without chaperones and this and that. There's certain things that they can't do because the kids are too young, and it requires all this other stuff to come with it in order for these decisions to be made. The young age definitely is hindering the growth of this esport, in my personal opinion, long term. And I think it is going to get to a point long term where we need to make that change. But that doesn't mean I think we need to get rid of younger players as a whole. And that's point number two. I think by making this transition, you then build a true academy league. You make a younger league from ages 13 to 16, where teams can, if they choose to, allocate and make a league for younger players. It's not officially RLCS sanctioned. It is a place where you can foster new talent and provide them slow exposure to the mainstream. You don't have as much pressure, as much traveling. You don't have as much of the social exposure that comes from being a pro. These people are still allowed to do their school stuff. And yes, they may have a little bit of extra allocation from their free time going into practicing and playing and stuff like that. But now they can take slower steps into the mainstream that is RLCS. You do a sister league, a minor league, a academy league. Academy means it's more so school oriented, but you take a younger league approach into the RLCS where you use these players. So for example, say you are G2 Esports. G2 Esports has their starting roster and they're going great. They bring in a player like Drees or the Aquas, the Oskis, the whatever, these younger players, and say, hey, we want to sign you. You're able to stream, so it's beneficial for us, right? This is a very beneficial way for us as an organization to not only help these players become young adults that are used to the social side of things, talking and doing interviews and all that kind of stuff. But it's a way to foster new talent without the pressures that come from, okay, you got to leave school, you got to go to these tournaments, you got to do these things. But if the opportunity presents itself, yeah, let's take these young players and show them what it's like. And that's more so on the reliance of the organizations taking that step rather than Psyonix having to build it. And maybe they do still have league play tournaments and stuff like that, but there is ways that they could create a system in place where you sign 13 to 16-year-olds, you give them more of like a content creator type contract, which is actually more valuable probably to the organization anyway at the time, and you use that to build them up. You saw Kansas City Pioneers try to do this with Drawley recently, but you create a system in a league that is a step below RLCS without having to do all the proper, you know, RLCS-esque scheduling, constant matches, open qualifier, all that kind of stuff, and you just simplify it a lot. But hopefully this makes these players more exposed to what it's like without the crazy pressures that come from it as well. So you're a young player who's 13, you can start streaming legally on Twitch and earning money. We signed this player because he's an up-and-comer, he's very talented. We show him the ropes. This is what it's kind of like to be on an esports organization. These are the obligations that come with it, all this kind of stuff. And you slowly work them into the system. And all of a sudden you find a diamond in the rough. This player is absolutely cracked. Guess who at 17 has a tryout for that team? It's ways to not only propel and find new talent, but it's also a really good way to make sure that the societal and the pressures that come from aren't as heavy. So if you are going to make those types of changes, a grandfather clause, all that kind of stuff, I think you need to do it in a way where at the same time you create a minor league or a sister league or an academy league, as I stated, in order to help develop that. I can tell you, I recently went to a esports summit here in Milwaukee and in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I drove a couple hours south and did stuff in Wisconsin to talk about building and developing high school leagues and stuff like that. And they are putting a lot of emphasis on that because that is what we are used to for mainstream and traditional sports. The thing is most players that are good and talented enough skip that step altogether. So, not saying that these players can't go into the RLCS, but it is creating a system and a place for these players to not be under as much stress and miss as much school and everything else. But 13 to 16-year-olds, which is usually 8th grade to freshman in high school, up to usually a junior, maybe a senior sometimes. I know I was 16, I think, as a senior because I was very young for my grade, but I was 17 by the time I graduated. And this is a good way to I guess, build that up. So the final proposal I would have if I was doing this, just to kind of talk about it, is you take RLCS, you increase it to 17, you put in a grandfather clause to make sure that if 15 by this time period or this time frame, they're still allowed to compete. You then at the same time announce an academy league or a league that is a minor league below it that is only for ages from 13 to 16. It's not as grueling, it's not as much of a grind, but it's still a good place to build and develop this talent. And then from there, you obviously refine and try to create a system that keeps bringing in and feeding in new talent into the RLCS. That's the first place to look, but you can still find the anomalies based upon everything else. That is the way I would go about it. That is the way that I would personally present it. And that's only because I think that right now the young age is a detriment and could be a problem more so long-term than if we were to increase it. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if this is a good idea, bad idea. Do you think there's other tweaks that should be made? Is there certain things that you think should be implemented? Do you like my idea and think there's things missing from it? Let me know in the comments down below. But ultimately, these videos, these conversation points are literally that. I think it should be a conversation. I think it's something that should be discussed because when the time comes, I think this stuff is going to be almost a requirement for the betterment. And this doesn't come from just me. You've seen other esports and stuff do this as well. A lot of my background in esports actually comes from League of Legends, and there's a reason why I think League of Legends is the #1 esport in the world right now. It continues to win every single thing, and a lot of that is due to Riot and the amount of money and effort they're putting into creating a structure with their challenger system and everything else. So all we can do is be better. All we can do is hope for the better, and by talking about it and creating this conversation, I think that helps. So with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully you like more of it as more art to come in the future. And if you want to make sure you don't miss out on those, if you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.